The billionaire's sister suddenly collapsed to the floor. Guests rushed toward her in panic. The maid shoved them back. "Nobody touch her." A furious executive grabbed her arm. "You're just a maid." She tore free and looked straight at the billionaire. "Your sister is having a stroke. Give me 3 minutes, or you may lose her forever." The entire dining room froze. Every life now depended on the woman nobody had noticed. Grace was already on her knees beside Lauren before anyone understood what was happening. "Call emergency services. Tell them possible stroke. 28-year-old female. Symptoms started less than a minute ago." Nobody moved. Grace looked up sharply. "Now." Nathan Calloway pulled out his phone. Panic spread through the grand dining hall of the Calloway estate. One guest shouted for water. Another reached beneath Lauren's shoulders to lift her. Grace caught his wrist. "Don't move her. Before we dive in, drop your city in the comments. If you're new here, hit subscribe. We tell stories every week that stay with you long after they end. Trust me, what this maid does next, you are not ready. Let's go." That evening had begun like any other at the Calloway estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. Nathan Calloway was hosting a private dinner for executives, investors, and old family friends. 30 guests seated across a long table in a room that smelled of fresh flowers and expensive wine. Grace Mitchell had worked at the estate for 7 months. She moved through the evening quietly, refilling glasses, clearing plates, invisible the way good household staff always were. Nobody asked her name. Nobody needed to. Lauren Calloway sat near the head of the table, laughing at something a guest had said. She looked healthy. She looked fine. Then at exactly 8:17, her fork slipped from her fingers. Her head tilted. She slid from her chair onto the marble floor. Chaos erupted. Guests stood. Chairs scraped. Someone screamed. Richard Hale, the estate manager, pushed through the crowd shouting for everyone to stay calm. But calm was not what Lauren needed. Grace had seen it from across the room. The fork dropping. The head tilting. The way Lauren's left side went slack a fraction of a second before the rest of her body followed. She crossed the room in 4 steps, dropped to her knees, and placed herself between Lauren and every well-meaning person about to make a critical mistake. "She can't stay on the floor," a man insisted. "Yes, she can." The authority in Grace's voice stopped him cold. She turned to Lauren. "Can you hear me?" Lauren blinked. "Yes." The word came out thick and distorted. Grace's stomach tightened, but nothing showed on her face. "Good. Look at me. Only me." She checked Lauren's face carefully. "Smile for me." Lauren tried. The left side of her face barely moved. Grace kept her voice steady. "Now raise both arms." Lauren lifted them. Her left arm drifted downward almost immediately. Grace checked the time. The signs were unmistakable. Face drooping. Arm weakness. Speech difficulty. Time mattered now more than almost anything else. Behind her, Richard Hale pushed through the gathering crowd. "Grace, what the hell are you doing?" She ignored him. Richard grabbed her shoulder. "These are private guests. Step away immediately." Grace shrugged him off without looking away from Lauren. "If you interfere again, you may cost this woman her chance to recover." Richard's face reddened. "You are a maid." Grace finally looked at him. "Not right now." The room went silent. Nathan remained on the phone, answering the dispatcher's questions with clipped precision. Grace noticed Lauren trying to swallow. "No water," she said immediately. A guest holding a glass stopped mid-step. "She needs nothing by mouth. Her swallowing may be impaired." Grace shifted carefully, keeping Lauren safe, watching her breathing. "Lauren, stay with me. Tell me your full name." "Lauren Calloway." "Good. Do you know where you are?" Lauren struggled. Fear entered her eyes. Grace took her hand. "You're doing fine. Don't fight the words. Just breathe." Across the room, Nathan watched. Men twice Grace's size had gone pale. Executives who commanded thousands of employees were shouting over one another. Grace was the only person in that room untouched by the chaos. Nathan ended the call. "Ambulance is 3 minutes out." "Good. I need the exact time symptoms began." Nathan glanced toward the table. She dropped her fork at 8:17. Was she normal immediately before that? Yes. Any blood thinners? Recent surgery? Medical conditions? Nathan answered each question. For perhaps the first time in years, Nathan Calloway did exactly what someone else told him to do. No argument, no negotiation, no demand for explanations. His sister's frightened eyes had stripped rank and wealth from the room. There was only time, and Grace understood how quickly it disappeared. Sirens became audible outside. Richard stepped forward again. This has gone far enough. Nathan turned his head. One look stopped him. Touch her again, Nathan said quietly. And you answer to me. Richard froze. Seconds later, paramedics entered with their equipment. Grace gave the lead paramedic a concise report. Sudden facial droop, left arm weakness, and slurred speech. Last known well at 8:17. No food or fluids given. She's remained responsive, airway stable. The paramedic stared at her. You medical? Grace hesitated. Former ICU nurse. Nathan heard every word. The paramedics moved Lauren onto the stretcher and rushed her toward the exit. Nathan followed, then stopped beside Grace. For one brief second, the most powerful man in Greenwich looked less like a billionaire and more like a terrified older brother. You knew exactly what to do. Grace looked toward the doors carrying his sister away. I knew what not to waste. What? She met his eyes. Time. Then she stepped back. But Nathan Calloway did not forget her face. By midnight, Lauren was inside the neurological intensive care unit at Greenwich Hospital. Nathan stood outside the glass doors while physicians moved around his sister. He had spent his entire life believing every problem could be controlled through preparation, money, influence, or reputation. None of those things had recognized Lauren's stroke. A maid had, and that bothered him almost as much as it fascinated him. His phone rang constantly. Board members wanted updates. Associates offered private specialists. Victoria Langston had already sent 3 messages asking whether she should come to the hospital. Nathan ignored them all. Instead, he called one of the few men he trusted completely. Find out who Grace Mitchell is. There was a pause. The maid. Yes. How deep? Nathan looked through the glass at Lauren. Deep enough to tell me why a woman clearing dinner plates knew more than everyone in that room. If the story is already pulling you in, hit that like button right now. You don't want to miss what Nathan discovers next. By morning, Nathan had his answer. Grace Mitchell had not exaggerated her credentials. She had understated them. She had graduated near the top of her nursing class at Columbia, earned excellent clinical evaluations, and eventually worked in the intensive care unit at New York Presbyterian, where former supervisors described her as unusually calm during emergencies. There were no disciplinary complaints, no malpractice accusations, no suspicious resignation. Nothing that explained why she was folding linens instead of caring for patients. Nathan read the report twice, then a third time. One line caught his attention. Voluntary resignation. Family circumstances. That was all. Nathan disliked incomplete information. He had built a financial empire by understanding every detail before making a decision. 2 words where an explanation should have been felt like a locked door in his own house. 3 days later, he returned to the estate's main kitchen. Richard Hale nearly sprinted across the hallway when he saw him coming. Mr. Calloway, I'm relieved to hear your sister is stable. Please understand that what happened the other night was completely outside our normal. Where is Grace? Richard stopped. Excuse me? Grace Mitchell. Richard's expression tightened. She's working, sir. Then I'll wait. Nathan chose a quiet room off the main hallway. Minutes later, Grace appeared carrying a tray of freshly polished silverware. She showed no visible surprise. Good evening, Mr. Calloway. You remember me? Your sister collapsed during my shift. You're difficult to forget. The corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. How is she? Improving. Relief softened Grace's face immediately. Not curiosity, not calculation. Relief. Can she speak? Some words. The doctors are optimistic. Grace released a breath. That's good. Nathan studied her. You never told me you were an ICU nurse. You didn't ask. You didn't think it was relevant? That night it was relevant. Tonight you need someone to put this silverware away. She turned toward the cabinet. Nathan did not move. Why did you leave? For the first time, something changed in her expression. A small wall went up. That isn't part of my job description, Mr. Calloway. I looked into your professional record. Her eyes sharpened. You investigated me? I needed to know who saved my sister. You could have asked. I just did. And I'm choosing not to answer. Most people became nervous when Nathan stared at them. Grace simply waited. The silverware sat untouched between them. Finally, he spoke. Your record says family circumstances. Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the tray. That was personal. Nathan recognized the warning and, unusually, respected it. He leaned back. Then I won't ask again. That surprised her. Before she could respond, Richard appeared in the doorway. Is there a problem, Mr. Calloway? No. Richard glanced at Grace. If her behavior is making you uncomfortable, I can reassign her to another wing of the house. Nathan's gaze turned cold. Her behavior saved my sister. Richard swallowed. Of course. I only meant. I know what you meant. Richard disappeared. Grace looked at Nathan for a long moment. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. No. Men like you usually think you do. That earned the faintest smile. You have strong opinions about men like me. I have strong opinions about everyone. For the first time since Lauren's collapse, Nathan felt something unexpected. Amusement. Not the polished kind he manufactured at board meetings. Something unguarded. Grace picked up the tray again. Now, if you'll excuse me, this silverware won't organize itself. Nathan watched her leave. Later that evening, another piece of information reached him. A former ICU colleague remembered why Grace had begun missing optional shifts before resigning. Her mother had become ill. Not briefly, not mildly. The illness had lasted years. And when Nathan asked what kind of illness could make one of the hospital's most promising nurses abandon the career she had built, the answer came quietly. Alzheimer's disease. Nathan looked through the window at Grace crossing the estate grounds in the evening light. Nothing about her suggested bitterness. Nothing asked to be admired. For the first time, Nathan understood that the mystery was not why Grace Mitchell had stopped being a nurse. It was what she had loved enough to give nursing up. Nathan could have ordered another investigation. Instead, he did something less familiar. He waited. Lauren's recovery demanded most of his attention. Her speech improved slowly. Then her left hand began responding to therapy. Every small victory changed the atmosphere around her hospital room. One afternoon, Lauren caught him reading Grace's professional record again. You're obsessed. Her words were still slower than before, but the teasing was unmistakable. I'm thorough. You've read that page 4 times. Nathan folded the report. Lauren smiled. 5. He ignored her, but the question remained. Why would a woman talented enough to build a career in critical care simply walk away? The answer came from Dr. Sarah Kent, a former ICU colleague who agreed to speak only after Nathan made it clear Grace was not in trouble. Grace didn't leave because she stopped loving nursing, Sarah told him. She left because she loved someone more. Her mother, Dorothy Mitchell, had begun forgetting small things first. Appointments, names, where she had left her keys. Then came the diagnosis, Alzheimer's disease. Grace initially believed she could manage both worlds. She worked 12-hour ICU shifts at New York Presbyterian, drove across the city afterward, prepared her mother's meals, organized medications, paid bills, and slept whenever exhaustion allowed. For nearly 2 years, she barely complained. Then Dorothy deteriorated. She began wandering. Once Grace found her 3 blocks from their apartment in Brooklyn wearing slippers in the rain. Another time Dorothy left the stove burning because she had forgotten she was cooking. Full-time care was no longer optional. Why didn't Grace hire someone? Nathan asked. She did. Nathan said nothing. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. Good care is expensive, Mr. Calloway. Grace spent her savings, then her retirement account, then almost everything else she had. Nathan looked down at the file. The voluntary resignation suddenly meant something very different. She quit to become her mother's caregiver? She chose her mother. There was no admiration in Sarah's voice, only fact, as if Grace herself would have rejected the idea that caring for the woman who raised her deserved applause. How long? Until Dorothy died. Nathan remained silent. And afterward? Sarah sighed. By then Grace was grieving, financially drained, and exhausted. Returning to intensive care wasn't as simple as putting the uniform back on. So she found work that paid the bills while she figured out whether she still wanted medicine to own that much of her life. That evening, Nathan walked through the estate. He found Grace in the library, straightening shelves. She was humming something quietly to herself. Nothing about her posture carried the weight of everything she had lost. She simply moved through her work the way she always did, carefully, without complaint, without asking anyone to notice. Something inside Nathan shifted. He had spent years measuring people by leverage, what they wanted, what they feared, what they could be persuaded to sacrifice. Grace had sacrificed almost everything and apparently expected nothing in return. When Grace returned from the library, Nathan was standing in the hallway. She stopped. "You're still here. I heard about your mother." Her expression changed instantly. "From your investigation? Or from someone who worked with me?" Nathan held her gaze. "Does it matter?" Grace looked away. For several seconds, neither spoke. The hallway was empty. Somewhere deeper in the estate, a clock ticked steadily. "I'm sorry," Nathan said. She seemed almost surprised by the simplicity of it. "Thank you. You gave up your career for her." "No." Nathan frowned. "I know what happened. You know the facts." Grace leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Not defensive. Tired. "I didn't give up my career for my mother. I chose my mother while I still had her." Her voice remained steady. Nursing would still exist afterward. She wouldn't. Nathan had no answer for that. "Do you regret it? Losing her?" Grace paused, choosing her words carefully. "Every day." Another pause. "Regretting choosing her?" "Never." Then something crossed her face that Nathan had not seen before. Not sadness exactly. Something deeper. "The hardest part wasn't watching her forget my name." Nathan waited. "It was realizing I still knew exactly who she was." She straightened and looked at him directly. "She would call me sweetheart sometimes. Not because she remembered I was her daughter. Because she was kind to strangers." Grace's voice didn't break. That's who she was. Even when she had nothing left, she was still kind. She walked away before Nathan could respond. For once, he did not follow a question until he had every answer. He simply watched her leave and understood that the woman who had saved Lauren had already spent years trying to save someone she knew she could never cure. Respect came first. Something warmer was beginning behind it, and Nathan was not yet ready to give that feeling a name. Victoria Langston first heard Grace's name from Nathan. That alone was enough to make her pay attention. For years, Victoria had occupied a carefully undefined place beside him. She attended his charity galas, appeared at private dinners, and moved through his social circle with the confidence of a woman everyone assumed would eventually become something more. Nathan had never made that promise. Victoria had simply grown accustomed to nobody challenging the possibility. Then a maid began appearing in his conversations. Not often. That made it worse. Nathan rarely spoke about anyone without a reason. At Lauren's hospital suite, Victoria arrived carrying flowers and found Grace already there. Lauren was sitting beside the window, slowly practicing words with a speech therapist's exercise cards. Grace held one up. Lauren stared at her. "You're evil." "Excellent pronunciation." Lauren laughed. So did Nathan. Victoria stopped in the doorway. She could not remember the last time she had heard him laugh that easily. Grace noticed her first and stood. "You must be Victoria." Victoria's smile was flawless. "And you must be the maid." The room cooled instantly. Grace merely nodded. That too. Later that afternoon, Victoria cornered Richard at the estate. You allowed a maid with an expired clinical career to take control of a medical emergency involving one of the most powerful families in this state. Richard immediately became defensive. I tried to stop her. Then perhaps people should know that. Within days, whispers began circulating among the Calloway family's private circle. Grace had supposedly dramatized Lauren's symptoms. She had allegedly interfered with guests. Someone claimed she had announced her nursing background to impress Nathan, although Grace had done precisely the opposite. Richard called Grace into his office. You created a liability for this household. I recognized a stroke. You acted outside your position. My position was the closest person who knew what was happening. You embarrassed important guests. Grace stared at him. A woman's brain was losing blood flow, and you're worried someone felt embarrassed? Richard's jaw tightened. I'm placing a formal warning in your employment record. For saving her? For refusing management instructions. Grace looked at the paper, then pushed it back across his desk. I won't sign that. Richard leaned forward. You should remember how replaceable household staff are. Grace's expression remained calm. So should you. The confrontation might have remained private if Lauren had not learned about it. Still recovering, she arrived at the estate with Nathan 2 days later. Richard hurried toward them. Ms. Calloway, what a wonderful surprise. Please understand that what happened. I heard you disciplined Grace. Richard's smile faltered. There were procedural concerns. Lauren looked at him for several seconds. Her speech remained deliberate, but every word was clear. I remember that night. Richard said nothing. I remember people shouting. I remember someone trying to give me water. I remember being terrified because my arm wouldn't move. Her gaze hardened. And I remember Grace. Victoria, standing nearby, stepped in. No one denies she helped, Lauren. The question is whether she may have overstated the danger. Lauren turned toward her. My neurologist didn't think so. Victoria's smile tightened. I only mean that emotions can distort memories. My brain was injured, Victoria, not my intelligence. Silence spread across the room. Nathan watched without interfering. Lauren continued. Grace recognized what was happening before anyone else. She kept people from moving me. She stopped them from giving me anything to swallow. She got the ambulance called immediately. Then she looked directly at Richard. You tried to pull her away. Richard went pale. I was maintaining order. No, Lauren said quietly. She was. Across the hallway, Grace had stopped moving. She had not asked Lauren to defend her. She had not asked Nathan to intervene. That mattered to him more than anything else that evening. Victoria saw Nathan looking at Grace and understood something she had not expected. Gratitude was becoming respect. Respect was becoming attachment. And unlike money, influence, or social position, attachment was something Victoria could not simply purchase. Victoria expected Grace's past to contain something useful. It did not. Every former supervisor described a capable nurse. Every available record showed a woman who had left voluntarily. Even the years spent caring for her mother offered nothing scandalous. So Victoria changed tactics. If Grace's past could not discredit her, perhaps the rescue could. Questions began circulating among the Calloway family's private circle. Had Lauren truly been in immediate danger? Had Grace frightened everyone unnecessarily? Had an unlicensed former nurse exceeded her authority because Nathan Calloway happened to be watching? Richard did nothing to stop the rumors. Then he made the mistake of putting his version in writing. His internal incident report described Grace's actions as unnecessary intervention by household staff before qualified medical professionals arrived. Nathan obtained a copy. He read it once. Then he called Lauren's neurologist. The answer arrived with considerably less ambiguity. Lauren had suffered an acute ischemic stroke. Her documented symptoms had begun at approximately 8:17. The emergency call had been placed almost immediately. The paramedic report specifically recorded facial asymmetry, unilateral arm weakness, and impaired speech before hospital arrival. The neurologist explained the timeline to Nathan and Lauren together. Stroke treatment is extremely time-sensitive. The faster we identify what is happening, the faster we can evaluate the patient for appropriate treatment. He reviewed the emergency notes. She also prevented people from giving you water while your swallowing ability was uncertain. Stroke can impair swallowing and increase aspiration risk. Nathan's jaw tightened. What about keeping her still? Keeping the situation controlled while monitoring her condition was appropriate. More importantly, she communicated the symptom onset time clearly to the paramedics. The doctor looked directly at Lauren. That information matters. Lauren became quiet. How much? In stroke care, we often say time is brain. Every minute without adequate blood flow can matter. The rapid recognition gave us something extremely valuable. What? Time to act. Days later, the estate hosted another private dinner attended by many of the same families who had witnessed Lauren's collapse. Before dinner began, Nathan stood. Conversation stopped immediately. Lauren sat beside him, still recovering but visibly stronger. Grace stood near the edge of the room with the other household staff. Nathan placed a copy of the medical summary on the table. My sister suffered an acute stroke. Her physicians confirmed that rapid recognition of her symptoms was critical to getting her evaluated and treated without unnecessary delay. His gaze moved across the room. While educated people panicked, Grace Mitchell recognized what was happening. He turned toward Richard. And while she was doing that, her manager repeatedly ordered her away. Richard's face drained of color. Victoria spoke carefully. No one disputes that Grace helped. Some people were simply concerned that her involvement may have been motivated by what? Victoria hesitated. Attention. Lauren pushed herself to her feet. Then she chose a strange way to get it. Everyone looked at her. She never told us she had been an ICU nurse until the paramedics asked. She never contacted my brother afterward. She never asked for money. She never asked for recognition. Nathan looked toward Grace. And when I investigated her, she was angry about that too. A few restrained laughs broke the tension. Even Grace almost smiled. Nathan walked toward her. For once, Grace appeared uncomfortable. Not because she feared him, because an entire room was watching. I don't need this, she whispered. I know. Then why are you doing it? Gratitude expressed privately cannot repair humiliation delivered publicly. That silenced her. Nathan turned back to the guests. Grace Mitchell did not exploit my sister's emergency. His eyes settled on Richard, then Victoria. She responded to it. He lifted his glass. My family owes her something money cannot purchase. He paused. Respect. Lauren lifted her glass first. Others followed. Grace looked around the room where weeks earlier people had seen only a maid standing where she did not belong. Now nobody looked away. But Nathan noticed something more important. Grace did not straighten because powerful people finally respected her. She had been standing straight all along. 3 weeks after the dinner, Grace found an envelope on the kitchen counter where she usually began her morning shift. Inside was an invitation. Callaway Foundation was launching a scholarship program for nurses returning to clinical practice after leaving the profession to care for family members. Tuition assistance, licensing support, refresher training, clinical placement. Grace read the announcement twice. Then she found Nathan in his study. You did this. He glanced at the envelope. I approved it. For me? No. She crossed her arms. That answer arrived suspiciously fast. Nathan motioned toward the empty chair. Grace remained standing. He sighed. The program was inspired by you. It was not created exclusively for you. That sounds like something a lawyer taught you to say. It sounds like something I learned after realizing you would throw the envelope at me if your name was printed on it. She almost laughed. Almost. Nathan continued. There are nurses who leave medicine because a parent gets sick. Or a spouse. Sometimes a child. Years later, they want to return and discover the road back is expensive and complicated. Grace's expression softened. You researched that? I research problems before I spend money on them. There he is. Who? The terrifying billionaire. Nathan leaned back. I was beginning to worry you'd forgotten. She finally sat. What do you want from me? Nothing. Grace studied him. People with Nathan's wealth rarely understood that word. He seemed to recognize her suspicion. You don't owe me an application. You don't owe my foundation publicity. And you certainly don't owe me a career decision. Then why give me this? Because you reminded me that sometimes capable people disappear from professions for reasons that have nothing to do with capability. That landed harder than Grace expected. She looked down at the envelope. For years she had told herself nursing belonged to another version of her. The woman who could work 12-hour shifts and still call her mother afterward. The woman who believed competence could solve almost anything. Alzheimer's had taught her otherwise. After Dorothy died, Grace couldn't walk into a hospital without remembering the one patient she had loved most and could never save. Working at the estate had been simpler. Nobody died because she missed something. Nobody's frightened family searched her face for certainty. You think I'm afraid? She said. Nathan did not deny it. I think you're allowed to be. My mother forgot who I was near the end. Nathan stayed silent. I could handle ventilators, codes, families screaming at me. But I couldn't handle walking into her room and watching her look at me like a stranger. And after she died, everyone kept telling me to go back. Like returning would prove I was okay. And you weren't. No. Are you now? Grace considered the question honestly. I don't know. Nathan nodded. Then don't apply. She stared at him. You built an entire program partly because of me, and you're telling me not to use it? I'm telling you not to let gratitude make the decision. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Grace never mentioned the envelope. But one afternoon, she visited New York Presbyterian. Dr. Sarah Kent met her in the lobby. They walked through familiar corridors until Grace stopped outside the ICU. For several minutes, she could not enter. Then a nurse hurried past, comforting a frightened family while responding to a monitor alarm with practiced calm. Grace remembered something she had buried beneath grief. Nursing had never been about defeating death. It had been about refusing to abandon people when they were frightened. Her mother had taught her that better than any hospital ever could. The following morning, Nathan received a message. 3 words. I applied today. He read it twice, then replied, Good. Nothing more. Grace smiled at the screen. 1 year later, Lauren Calloway walked into the Calloway estate without assistance. No wheelchair. No therapist beside her. No brother hovering 2 steps behind. Although Nathan was technically only 4 steps back. I can see you, Lauren called over her shoulder. I'm walking normally. I said nothing. You're thinking loudly. Grace laughed from across the room. She had arrived directly from the hospital, still wearing navy scrubs beneath her coat. Lauren crossed the room and wrapped both arms around her. A year earlier, one of those arms had fallen helplessly toward the floor. Grace never forgot that. Neither did Lauren. You're squeezing harder, Grace said. Occupational therapy. Show off. Absolutely. The estate had changed too. Richard Hale was no longer its manager. After his handling of Lauren's emergency and the false report became impossible to defend, Nathan had replaced him. Victoria had disappeared from Nathan's life shortly afterward. No dramatic confrontation. No threats. Only consequences. The scholarship program had expanded into several hospitals across New York and Connecticut, helping former nurses rebuild careers interrupted by years of family caregiving. Grace had refused every request to have the program named after her. She had accepted something else instead. A permanent ICU position at New York Presbyterian. She had earned it herself. Months of refresher courses, supervised clinical training, and licensing requirements had brought her back. Nathan had opened a door, but he had never carried her through it. She had done that on her own. And when Grace walked onto the floor wearing scrubs again, she understood something she had not been ready to understand before. Returning to nursing did not mean leaving her mother behind. It meant carrying forward everything caring for Dorothy had taught her. Among the dinner guests that evening was a young nursing student supported by the scholarship program. She recognized Grace immediately. "You're the nurse who saved Ms. Calloway." Grace shook her head. "I was the maid who recognized what was happening." The student looked toward Nathan. "Then why does Mr. Calloway still thank you like you saved everything?" Lauren heard her. She smiled softly. "She didn't just save my life." Across the room, Nathan looked up. Lauren continued. "She gave my brother his family back." Grace's eyes met Nathan's. He approached and stopped beside her. His hand found hers. No announcement followed. No room fell silent. There was no dramatic promise about forever. They had learned that the strongest things in their lives had rarely arrived dramatically. A nurse had become a maid because love demanded sacrifice. A billionaire had trusted a stranger because fear demanded humility. A sister had survived because one overlooked woman refused to waste time. And two people who had spent years protecting everyone else had slowly learned to let someone protect a place inside them too. Lauren watched Nathan lace his fingers through Grace's. Neither of them let go. This time, nobody needed saving. They were simply standing together. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now. Share it with someone who needs to hear that the people we overlook are often the ones who save us. Subscribe if you haven't already. We drop stories like this every single week. Now tell me in the comments, what hit you harder? Grace giving up nursing for her mother, or Nathan learning to trust someone he couldn't control? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment.